How powerful is Brahman in Hinduism? Let us begin with the cosmology. The cosmology is essentially a hierarchical structure of transcendence and concepts. It begins with the cyclical ages and the yugas, Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali Yuga, which form the cycle of immortality and eternity, an inevitable repetition that includes the concept of Ewigkeit, as well as Pralaya, which brings about complete cosmic erasure and dissolution. However, this entire temporal structure, including the cosmic cycle extending across Brahma's divine day, is considered merely a lower illusion, Maya, within the broader scope of samsara. From a compositional perspective, the 14 lokas extend from the lower and physical realms to abstract celestial and metaphysical realms, such as Brahmaloka, which represents realms of pure thought and incorporates Buddhist cosmology as a branch or internal component within it, alongside containing the theory of everything, both physically and philosophically. This gives it an immense cosmological baseline that transcends conventional dimensional structures and encompasses 1B and high 1B levels through infinite layers of ref. Within the cosmological mandala system, the mandala is the all-encompassing cosmic map and framework that contains all existence and infinite levels, as well as the body of God, while its center is the absolute reality. This ultimately leads to samsara as an infinite, hierarchical stream and chain of repetition, causality, and karma. Simply attaining moksha, or absolute liberation from this cycle, represents a qualitative and conceptual leap beyond all of these infinite hierarchical chains. This immediately places liberation and the highest metaphysical components of the cosmology at 1A, outer versal, and 1A plus levels, as they completely transcend the frameworks of time, space, matter, and causality, rendering all material and cyclical existence merely an illusion and a lower framework beneath the all-encompassing cosmic center of reality. Now we move on to the Trimurti. The Hindu Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, represents the state. The fact that this Trimurti governs everything from the beginning and origin of existence to death and destruction, encompassing the cosmology of samsara, the lokas, and cyclical time in all its dimensions, places the Trimurti as an omnipotent metaphysical engine of existence within existence. This grants its manifestations 1A plus, outer versal plus, and high 1A, levels based on their absolute sovereignty over all hierarchical layers, dimensional structures, causality, and cardinalities beneath the domain of Maya. However, the most terrifying and powerful point is that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are not separate entities or independent tiers. Rather, they are merely three aspects and three temporary modes of expression of the same singular primordial reality that surpasses all of them. This means that the entire Trimurti and its cosmic laws function merely as a lower manifestation and external shell of the greater ultimate reality. We move on to moksha. Moksha is a state of consciousness and realization of the absolute truth that completely cuts through and erases the illusion of Maya, entirely transcending the concepts of existence, non-existence, and absolute dualities. Most importantly, it represents a qualitative and conceptual transcendence, qualitative transcendence, of every possible or conceivable form and theory of infinity, including traditional infinity, absolute infinity, true infinity, and ontological, and existential perfection in all their mathematical and philosophical forms. Since moksha is self-sufficient and does not depend on any condition or law preceding logic, existence, and non-existence themselves, such that if it were to change, logic and absolute concepts would change in accordance with it. This immediately places the consciousness that has attained moksha beyond the boundaries of conventional tiering and directly at the ceiling of high, transcendent plus, because it transcends modal realism, 1T, transcendent polarity, and ontological perfection, functioning as an absolutely exceptional state of liberation that is completely independent of any theological, geometrical, or logical comparison or measurement, reducing all hierarchical cosmological structures, the Trimurti and samsara, to mere lower-level illusions and abstractions that cannot touch the ultimate truth of supreme enlightenment. We move on to Brahman. Brahman represents the absolute metaphysical and conceptual apex that breaks through and transcends all tiers and structures without exception. Brahman is not merely a god, being, or existence, but the unconditioned absolute reality that transcends form, attributes, essence, self, existence, and absolute non-existence, rising beyond all dualities, transcending duality and absolute transduality, as well as unity and multiplicity, since the entirety of the vast cosmology, with all its mandalas, the samsara cycle, the highest levels of the loka, the divine Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, Maya, and Atman is merely an apparent manifestation or projection that arises from and returns to it without diminishing or dividing it in any way, being the absolutely simple reality that transcends the aggregation of parts. Brahman represents the source of absolute self-sufficiency and comprehensive self-identity. Since the text this places Brahman fully at the absolute ceiling of the system as tier 0, apeiron, because it is the origin of all origins and the absolutely exceptional state that transcends existence, non-existence, perfection, thought, and the laws of identity and classification, reducing all tiers, mathematics, and both possible and impossible logic to nothing, more than a lower-level drop within the ocean of its unchanging and indivisible reality.